Hey everybody, welcome to the micro keynote for how to present an idea virtually. I want to start today by giving you a little story about what can go wrong when you're presenting virtually and really how you can fix it. This story tells you everything that you need to know over the next few minutes. Late last year, I was giving a webinar, a keynote address for an organization that was talking about corporate recognition. And what I was doing was I was giving just the best possible time that you could have in a keynote. When I looked down at my slides, and what did I realize? I'd been disconnected from the webinar. And I don't know quite how long that was, but I hadn't received a phone call yet, so I figured it was fairly recent. So, because we had rehearsed earlier, I went out and I got back online. And I was in action within a couple of minutes. But the thing is, what really made the difference and what made the scores high for the presentation was that I had spent the time beforehand to understand who my audience was, how I was going to make a clear point to them, and really how I could tell stories and use visual language to get the audience on board. So even if I got disconnected, it was still going to be a good presentation. Now I'm telling you this story because when you present virtually, things can go wrong. But if you just do three things, three simple things, you're going to make a difference. And those three things are, one is start with your audience. Two is have a point. And three, structure what you're talking about. Over the next couple minutes, we're going to unpack those. In fact, to get the most out of today's session, what I want you to do is I want you to do the following. One is I want you to pay attention for the story or the analogy that I'm going to give at the beginning of each of these chapters. These three segments are called chapters, the first one being about your audience. I want you to pay close attention to that story. From there, I'm going to give you a mindset reset, if you will. And finally, I'm going to give you a process. I'm going to tell you what I do as a speaker, a speechwriter, and a speaker coach to help leaders be the best that they can possibly be, whether they're standing on stage or standing in their home office. You ready? Let's get started. All right, we're talking about the three things that you can do to make a virtual presentation the best it can possibly be. And that starts with your audience. A couple of years ago, I was coaching a high-tech company, and they gave me a whole bunch of speakers who were going to a conference, and one of those speakers did something that I have never seen before and never seen since, but I wish I saw it more frequently. And here's what it was. That speaker went through the manifest of every single one of the 1,800 people who were going to attend this conference and found 50 people that he thought might attend his presentation. And he asked the question, how can I be most relevant to this audience? I got to tell you, that is a masterstroke. It's ingenious what he did there, because what he was doing was understanding who his audience was and what they wanted. I want you to do the same thing. Before you think about what you want to say, before you think about what platform you're going to use, I want you to think about the audience that you're presenting to. And that audience could be somebody you're talking to every couple of weeks, like your boss and your team, you're giving a numbers update, or it can be a larger group that you're presenting to. Start there. Start with your audience. And you want to start by asking a whole bunch of really relevant questions to create a profile of that audience. You want to understand, who are they? How many people are going to be there? What is it that moves that audience? What objections are they going to have? What do they value? And most importantly, once you ask all of those questions, you really want to ask, what does it take to win? When you can understand that audience and what it is that they expect from you and what it is that's going to get them to tune in and listen to you, then your content takes on a whole new level of relevance, and you've got a whole bunch of engagement going on at the exact same time. Rule number one, any presentation, live, virtual, conference call, you're starting with your audience. All right, now that you understand your audience and what they want, what you need to do is look at your content. It's the other side to a coin. On one side, who your audience is and what they want, and on the other side, who you are and what you want to say. And this is the place we always get stuck. Whenever I coach a leader anywhere, they always sit me down and they say, Jason, here's what I want to say. Now, the thing is that if you start with what you want to say, you're going to miss out what you need to do to connect with your audience. But the thing is that once we start getting into that, what do I want to say? It tends to be all over the place. Happens all the time with leaders again and again. And I have to remind them that, you know what, you're giving me enough content here for 2, 3, 4 presentations. The thing is your audience only has a finite amount that they can remember in a 15 or a 30 or goodness, a 60-minute presentation. You want to make sure that they've got the right stuff to take away. So that starts by sitting down and understanding what your point is and what your chapters are. Now, when I talk about your point, that's a thesis. What is that single thing? If you had one thing for your audience to remember, what is that one thing that you need them to remember? In a single sentence, maybe 2 sentences. Secondly, with each of your chapters, and your chapters prove your point or your thesis, they need to each be an individual headline, something that people can remember. Because ultimately what you're asking is, when people walk away, you want them to remember your point, and you want them to remember really the 3 chapters that you have around your point. Take this presentation as a great example. My point is there are 3 things that you can do to make a great presentation. I want you to remember that. And then I want you to remember the 3 headlines. And the 3 headlines are, you want to start with your audience. And then you want to have a clear point in chapters. And finally, what you need to do is you need to look at this thing structurally to be able to talk with your audience. That's the way that I formatted this piece, and that's why I'm able to present it to you most effectively. 1, look at your audience. 2, look at your point and try and distill your presentation down to something that a person can absorb. This is particularly important if you're on a conference call. Again, the audience can only remember so much stuff. And if you're barking at it, you got to make sure that you're saying it, you're repeating it, and you have that clear point to begin with. All right, so far we have done what? We have looked at the audience and we have looked at your point. Those 2 things, they hold true for any presentation, but the third one is really, really valuable when you're presenting virtually. And that is, there needs to be a structure to your presentation. This is something I don't see enough speechwriters and speaker coaches helping people understand. And because of that, a lot of presentations I see are meandering. They don't really give you a map for where you're going. But here's the problem. Psychologically, audiences will dial out. They will absolutely positively dial out, and you need to help them dial in. They will also get nervous if you don't know, or if they don't know, where it is that you're going in the first place. You need to give them a roadmap, and you can give them an express roadmap in the same way that I did at the beginning of this presentation by saying, I'm going to tell you 3 things today, and here is how you get the most out of that. In fact, that little trick, that little approach that says, I'm going to tell you how to get the most out of today's presentation, and then say, I'm going to tell you a story, I'm going to give you a mindset shift, and then I'm going to give you specific instructions on a process. I've been having a lot of success with that lately, particularly in virtual environments, because it tells the audience what to actively scan for. There's that old speechwriter's adage, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. And if you've seen today's presentation, I've done that a whole lot. I want you to do the exact same thing. Structure each of your chapters the exact same way. Open with a story or an analogy or a number or a something that really reaches the audience. Then dive into an individual story or some recognition or a specific element, but be consistent throughout. When you do this, you're subtly reminding the audience of where you're going. You can also directly tell them where you're going. You almost need to think of your presentation or each chapter of your presentation as a bunch of Lego blocks. One of the things that I really, really like is this whole idea of when you're on a panel. You know, when you're on a panel, you got 3 minutes to give an answer. Structure every single one of those answers exactly the same way. Begin with a great headline. I would really encourage you to consistently get amazing, not good, not great, amazing, epic at headlines. Start there. Then from that, dive into, what it is you're going to talk about. And then from there, then hit a listicle, right? Here's 3 things I want to say. Here's some bullets that I want to say. Here's a story. And at the very end, give the audience something to do. Give them action items or resources, but be consistent with each of your answers or each of your chapters or each of your segments. When you do that, your audience calms down just a little bit. And when they calm down, they're going to listen to you. And that allows you to connect. And ultimately, that's the thing that you want to take away from all three of these chapters. It is very much about your ability to connect with an audience. Great presentations have a whole bunch of things involved, but there are three things that stand out head and shoulders above the others. The first one is understanding who your audience is, what they want, and how you're going to move them. The second thing is to simplify your presentation in a way that makes it accessible. And the way you do that is through the headlines. It's a point, a series of chapters. Each of those has a headline. Those are the things that people are going to remember. And you're going to hit those headlines at the beginning and the end of each chapter. Finally, you're going to be very structural in the way that you speak to your audience, particularly in a virtual environment. You're giving them a GPS, a roadmap. I consistently use PowerPoint as exactly that. Those sorts of graphics help an audience understand where it is that you're going. And when you understand how to use PowerPoint as an effective tool, then you can use it to make a true difference. Ultimately, all of these things bundle together to do what? To help you connect. When you can connect with an audience effectively, you can move an audience effectively. And that's truly the reason that you're presenting. Otherwise, you can just send the same content out as an email or a social media post or a smoke signal, whatever it needs to be. You can put it out there so an audience can understand it. But you're presenting so that you are able to connect with your audience. Oh, I want you to learn more. I have a whole bunch that I have to tell you about presentations and presenting virtually. In fact, I wrote an ebook. It's called How to Present an Idea Virtually, and it's available right now at thinkjigsaw.com. Go and check it out. In fact, while you're there are videos, there are tools, there are infographics, there are resources, and there are blog posts, and they're all absolutely free. They will help you be a better storyteller, be better at presenting, be better at copywriting. All of those things that you require as a professional are available to you right now. Go check it out. thinkjigsaw.com. The book is called How to Present an Idea Virtually, and there's a whole bunch more. Thanks so much for listening to today's presentation. I have been Jason Thompson, and it has been a thrill in making you a better virtual presenter.